bring them over? Could you bring number 2 over? Could you bring Josh Cobble, get Josh and then Liam lined up, so you could just bring one in the next one, next in? Yeah, we're good. Ignore the camera. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Good. Well, Richard, you only had one Bradley Kent in the way, and that was it. You took him and you won the race. Nice and simple, right?
Yeah, it was a great start. Yeah, but yeah, just glad it's over.
Well, good afternoon again, everybody. Scott Woodwis here in the commentary box for the second of the 2 Caterham Academy races here today at Oulton Park to kick off their 2020 season. We saw the white group out on track in very treacherous weather conditions. Now it's the turn of their counterparts in the green group, and you have to argue they are in a slightly better position given the fact that it is a much drier track and it has stopped raining. So cars are on the grid. We'll be getting the grid on the screen very shortly. And the 5-second board goes up. So you might be possibly get set to go underway very shortly. So it's Chris Skillicorn on the front row of the grid on pole position on the left. Alongside him on the right is Tom Cockrell, and away they go. Everyone's slithering away from the grid, but Chris Skillicorn on the left from pole position looks to have possibly got the lead, although possibly from the second row of the grid, it might be Andy Lundy in the black and orange car takes the lead. They're side by side into Old Hall Corner for the first time. The rest of the field tussling around. The blue, white and orange car there is Rob Oldland as they head through in car number 71. They're all scrabbling for their own little bit of real estate on track, but they all appear to have got through cleanly. And it is Andy Lund in car number 2 who leads the way, and already we've got someone very sideways in the middle of Cascades. I can't quite see the number 97's around, so is 21, so that's Denishan Erkan's around. 56 is involved as well. 56 is Mika Lazarus. And there's a replay there of what happened. Also getting caught up there was the 97. Looked as though possibly there was a spin there for Erkan, and that got other cars caught up. Meanwhile, number 44, Chris Skillicorn, back into the lead as they head down towards the right-hander at Shell, and also attacking behind him for third place was Tom Cockrell in the red and white car. He's going for second on the exit of Shell as they head out of the 180-degree banked hairpin and onto the run to the first of the 2 chicanes. So up towards Britons for the first time. Skillicorn leads the way. Lund in second place. Cockrell in third. And this is another shot of the replay of what happened. And there you just see Denishan Erkan spinning around and kicking up a lot of water. There was number 97. Gwyndaf Jones was also involved in that too. And 56 was spinning in sympathy there. And that was Mika Lazarus, who started back in 7th. Change for second. Andy Lund loses the position to Tom Cockrell, who's now back into the place he started, although Lund wants to try and force the issue and go around the outside of the second part of Hislop, so that would have put him on the inside for Knickerbrook, but looks as though that Cockrell firmly shut the door on that move. And all the while, Chris Skillicorn, on what is clearly emerging to be a drying line on this still damp Oulton Park circuit here in Cheshire, is starting to run away here. Now, Chris Skillicorn, as we see the rest of the field coming through, he's another one of the drivers which competed in the aforementioned CaterhamRacer.com series earlier on. He competed in lockdown as well. Oh, there goes Andy Lund. Off goes the number 2. A complete 180-degree spin. He hits the edge of the gravel trap. Now, if he can get it back going again, that would be very impressive. Here's a live action replay. Just turns into the corner, the back end steps around, and away he goes. Now, he's managed to recover. Oops, and somebody else trying to get up the inside on corner exit, just managing to avoid him. But at the end of lap number 1, as they come across the line, Chris Skillicorn leads the way. It is in second place, Tom Cockrell. And then back to third place, it is a number 31 of Gould. So Colin Gould, who started back in 6th position, up 3 spots from where he started, which is good to see. 4th place goes to Griffiths. 5th to Duckworth. There's been more shenanigans at the final corner, involving, I think, Andy Lund. So Lund, who started on the 2nd row of the grid, is having a bit of a struggle here in these very tricky intermediate conditions. And everyone just trying to find their feet here and tippy-toe around the corner. There's cars 12 and 97. 97 is the red car that we saw spinning earlier on. And that was, if I can find him on my sheet here for a second, 97. Come back to that in a second because I was looking down my timing screen. Meanwhile, here come the leaders, at least some of the front-running cars in the mix. There is car number 16. Bruce Duckworth started in 8th position, and Duckworth at the moment is running in 5th place, following in the wheel tracks of car number 9, James Griffiths, who's had a great start on the opening couple of laps. He's up to 4th place and started back in 11th, so some great progress made by James Griffiths on this opening lap to make up a quite staggering 7 places. So he's in the side of the top 5 and looking to try and make up more places if he can, as he wiggles his way out of the Britain chicane and up over Hilltop. And you can definitely see it's not totally dry, but it's much drier than it was earlier on. You may remember, if you saw the white group cars out on track, the conditions were not the best for them. You see a move going on behind them here. That's a switch for position, and that is between, if we catch the numbers on the side, 98 and 96. So that is Hall and Mott switching places, and Hall got very sideways on the exit there, and Mott had to watch on and possibly look for an opportunity to repass. So very close battles, and another close battle going on behind them. That was between Hapgood and the silver and purple car. Whoops, and a spin for number 6. That is the number 6 of Eels, in the almost Marlborough-looking livery car. Marcus Eels, who started back in 17th place on the 9th row of the grid. Now, has he beached the car on the wet grass? The answer to that looks to be, thankfully, no, although he had to kind of hold on. And here's the replay in slow motion. Waltzing in graceful harmony, I call that. Round goes Marcus Eels, and he was very quick to keep the car rolling off the circuit, which meant that he wasn't on the racing line to bother the other car. So good, quick thinking and sharp driving there from Marcus Eels to keep himself offline, to not get anyone else involved in his own little incident. There's car 99 getting a slide on, and so is Ian Hapgood behind him as well. Car 99 is Toby Boys, who started back on row 8, 16th place on the grid. And if we look on the timing screen, Boys is now up to 10th place. So Chris Skillicorn has the fastest lap of the race, the first flying lap in this race. 2 minutes 20.807. He's at least 4/10 quicker than everyone else, but Skillicorn and Cockrell really are the class of the field, because everyone else is lapping in the 2:26s or slower, whereas the top two, Skillicorn's first proper flying lap was the 2:20.807, and Tom Cockrell was 2 minutes 21.279. So by far and away, these two cars are the quickest out there in this green group in these mixed conditions. You watch here, the battle continuing here between this is 4th and 5th, so this is now Griffiths ahead of Duckworth, and Duckworth looking for a dive into Shadlaw's hairpin. Here he comes, late on the brakes, but the outside line in these adverse conditions is a little better, it's a little grippier, because if you're offline, you usually go onto the part of the circuit where there's been quite a lot of rubber that put down. When you combine water with rubber, it gets very slippery, and so drivers always tend to use what's called the karting line, by taking the route off what would be the traditional racing line in the wet, and that in turn can allow them to pick up much more speed and grip. And so what you might find sometimes is a driver might be going deliberately wide in order to get better traction off the exit of the corner and to possibly try and complete a pass. So looking back here to this ongoing scrap for 4th, Bruce Duckworth trying to find a switch here. Looks as though the Duckworth did get through temporarily, as they're both slithering around in these very slippery conditions. And one thing I can tell you for a fact is, when it comes to track conditions, a driver either wants it fully dry or fully wet. You never want it in between, because it makes the car a nightmare to set up, and you're really on a knife edge when it comes to grip and setup parameters. When trying to find the right balance, it's never easy at all. So credit where credit's due to all these new drivers, who I have to remind are in their first ever race and they're certainly taking to it with aplomb. So credit where credit's due for everyone for surviving so far. One or two mishaps as, whoops, car 98 gets very sideways. That is the 98 of Hall. James Hall has started back in 12th, so this has been quite a topsy-turvy order so far in this race. Just going back to the front of the field. As across the line will come the leaders. So Skillicorn already gone through with Cockrell setting the fastest lap of the race. So they're into the 2-minute 19s and 2:18s now because Cockrell has got through in second place. Change for position there as car 26, which is Lawson, loses a place, and that would have been to the 12, I think, of Mountsey. So Ronald Mountsey starting back in 16th place. So lots of drivers yo-yoing up and down the field, and they're going through now. Looks to be car 10. That's Richard Brooks, whose father Tony used to run a Jaguar XJ220s at Le Mans and in European GT racing. Oops, there's a car off there at 29. Car 29 is having a bit of difficulty. Car 29 is Andrew Bergbaum, and it's always 3 abreast into the apex of a left-hander here, and that's there in the mix in the middle of that battle. It's car number 2. Andy Lundy started in 4th, and he's now having to fight his way back up through the order, down in 17th place. So he's had even more strife since we last saw him. He dropped around about the top 10 last time, but he seems to have had more problems. And now he's just made his way through past car number 12 of Ron Mountsey. So a lot more work to do for Andy Lundy. It's a livery that's very reminiscent to that of James Murphy, who races in the... He was racing in a 270R variant of this car last year. And we should quickly explain, whilst we've got a gap, that this car effectively is the same car that you would find competing in many ways as the Rotorsport Championship and the 270R Championship and the 310Rs, but the drivers keep the same car as they move up the Caterham ladder, which keeps the cost effectiveness of the package once you buy the initial academy season for your first year, and then you upgrade the car based on what it needs for certain categories to be able to make it through. So over the course of the next few seasons, the cars will have slightly uprated suspension, they'll have uprated tyres and brakes, have a little bit more horsepower. They will start to remove things up the windscreen, and removing himself from the circuit appears to be Andy Lund. He really is finding it difficult in these tricky conditions. He finds a bit more space. I think the term is over-enthusiastic when it comes to him, I think, but credit where credit's due, he is definitely giving it a good go. There's a good battle developing here towards the front. This is between, looks to be, that's the number 9 of Griffiths, and this also charging back here appears to be Denishan Erkan, who was the man who spun at the exits. They're all over the place behind him. I'll try and catch who that car was that was having a bit of a slide there. It might be the 99 of Boys, I think, that was having a spin. I did see Boys on the number plate, but here comes Erkan having a look up the outside of Griffiths for 4th position, heading into Oulton corner. You have to give them a lot of respect for finding the limits here, and a couple of them are even heading over the curbs and pushing a little too hard in some aspects, but you only learn by finding your limit and getting out of your comfort zone, and they are certainly out of their comfort zone at the moment as Denishan Erkan gets very sideways again at the base of the hill at Cascades. He has to sit back as he continues to chase the number 9 of Griffiths. Griffiths, as we say, running in 4th position after starting back in 11th, so great progress through the field in these early laps. Quick check-in with the leaders as we watch this battle for 4th. In fact, we'll come back to the leaders in a second because Denishan Erkan goes storming up the inside through Island Bend and gets the move done under brakes before he even turns into Shell Oils. And Denishan is another driver who's been competing in the eSports Caterham races, so he, along with the likes of Chris Skillicorn and others from the Green Group, has certainly been improving their skills virtually. There is the 99 of Boys, and I think that's the number 8 of Duckworth behind him as well, so he's in the mix there too. Also in there is Rob Oldland, another eSports racer. He's owned, this is his 4th Caterham, because he's also owned 2 different specifications, so he's certainly a fan of Caterhams, and he's decided to take the plunge and buy an academy car and go racing, so he certainly understands how to handle a Caterham on track, and he might not have experienced it in these tricky conditions, but he'll certainly have plenty of running and owning and possibly even track driving some Caterhams. A little wiggle there from another one of the drivers towards the bottom of the top 10. And Denishan Erkan has really checked out getting past Griffiths into 4th position. I was going to check in with the leaders for a second because Chris Skillicorn has a lead now of only just under a second and has just taken the fastest lap of the race back again. So they're getting quicker all the time as the circuit continues to dry out. It's a 2-minute 16.9 930 as number 98 of Hall flashes through the shot. He's being tailed down by both Boys and Duckworth. So this is the scrap that's going on for 5th down to 8th position as Ercan decides to run away to try and chase the top 3, but he's got a mammoth almost sort of 31-second lead gap to make up. But across the line comes Danishan Ercan, and he's 13 seconds back to a podium place. So, battle for 5th position he's on. And there goes Hall, who had his nose in front, but Griffiths comes back on the inside through Old Hall corner, and I think he's managed to make it through. And now there's an attack here from Boys number 99 trying to shape up in 7th place as Duckworth looks on, holding the racing line neatly, which conveniently is also becoming the dry line as they head through Cascades. There's only roughly just under 7 minutes to go in this first race of the season for the green group of the Academy. Such as the influx of Academy drivers every year that they have to split them into 2 groups to be able to give them an equal amount of track time, and that means that you get a group of drivers that don't race against the other half, but they do usually come together at the end of the year in a non-championship autumn trophy race, and that means you get a mixture of both drivers from the green and white group. And what that usually tends to do is give a precursor to what it might be like in terms of the main front runners for next year's Road Sport Championship, when the majority of drivers typically do move up from the Academy into the Road Sport, because when you're in the Academy you can only spend 1 year because you have to make way for the next group of novice drivers. It's only novice drivers in the season, so once you've completed the Academy, that's it. You can then move on to the Road Sport Championship, or the 270Rs or 310Rs, or even if you're feeling that confident, the 7 UK Championship. Feeling confident to try and make a move though. That was a possible move there for Hall, and round goes Griffiths. Griffiths loses the back end and spins away what would have been 5th position, and now that was a battle there from Boys. And looking here, look, Griffiths just got way too hot into the apex of the first part of Hislops, and round he goes. Almost a perfect 360, but he just had to hold on for a second. And now this intensifies the battle that goes on for what has now become 5th position, because it's now Hall, Boys and Duckworth, and I think that Boys has got through into a top 5 place. There is Danishan Ercan, who was originally born in Turkey, but he's now based in London. And here is that scrap. There is the 16 of Bruce Duckworth. Little wiggle there from the 98 of Hall. And it is in fact Boys that has got through into 5th position. Just over 5 minutes to go. New fast lap of the race is off the road, has gone. We'll check the number in a second. It's number 96. So that was Mott in 12th position. It was 12th position. Peter Mott has gone off the road, but he's managed to claw himself back on. I think we're possibly getting a shot of the leaders here. Yes, here they come, and they are practically nose to tail, because after that fastest lap of the race, Tom Cockrell has got the taste for a possible race victory on his racing debut. But Chris Skillicorn, who has certainly been pretty decent and even taken a couple of wins in the CoachingRacer.com esports series, getting himself ready for racing prep, racecraft, and preparing to get himself out on track for real, using all of that experience, including competing just this past week on Tuesday evening in the first Academy Championship race for Season 2 at a virtual Oulton Park. He will have had plenty of online track time, and he will be using the sim throughout the week to get himself improved as much as possible, and it really is paying off here, because Skillicorn is just holding on here ahead of Tom Cockrell as they wind their way through, and it's clear that these two really are the class of the field so far. Skillicorn turns his way into Lodge Corner with just under 4 minutes to go now. Cockrell has that fastest lap of the race, 2 minutes 15.995. They're coming up to put a lap on one of the slower cars in the field. I think it might be the 27 of Turner, because they've already put a lap on car number 17, which is driven by Todd Corder. So Kevin Turner should be their next lap target. And Skillicorn on that last couple of corners does appear to have pulled out a small gap though. Cockrell was right underneath him in the last few corners of a lap, but when they came across the line, the gap was now up to 8/10. So I think that Cockrell maybe was just a little bit too quick to get on the power exiting Lodge, and therefore didn't get enough traction heading up Deer Leap, which may have cost him a few tenths and a couple of car lengths in the process. So Chris Skillicorn comes up to put a lap on the 27. It is indeed the 27 of Kevin Turner. And smooth as you like, through goes Chris Skillicorn, although Cockrell manages to pick his way through pretty smoothly as well. So Chris Skillicorn there, car number 44. He's not quite done just yet. The next car he's got to put a lap on is going to be the green car. It should be number 49, which is Steve Lancaster, who started on the back row of the grid. Now they head over the crest of Hilltop, and again it's that section through Shell Oils and through Hislops where he starts to get an opportunity, and diving up the inside for the lead into the Hislop chicane goes Tom Cockrell. Can he get it stopped? And he has managed to get through, so a brilliant last gasp dive into the Hislop chicane puts Tom Cockrell in front, but I think Chris Skillicorn will have a reply here, tries to get the traction on the exit through Knickerbrook, and now Chris Skillicorn is tucked underneath the white roll cage of Tom Cockrell as they come over the crest, and they are nose to tail. They did manage to get around the back marker, but now they've got pretty clear track for them for quite a while, which means it should be the next 2 minutes or so of solid battling between up and down the pair. So Cockrell then leads the way as he comes in towards Druids Corner, and they're going to be heading on to the last lap of the race here because the timer has gone to 1 minute 45, and he's back up the inside. Chris Skillicorn looking for the leaders to come into Lodge Corner, and I think this is the part of the circuit where Skillicorn feels a little more confident because Cockrell tries to get the power down. He copes better this time as the circuit continues to get drier, but now they head over Deer Leap to what should be, I think, the last lap. Last lap board goes out, and here comes Tom Cockrell getting squeezed to the pit wall down towards Old Hall Corner. Skillicorn throws the block on the inside line into the right-hander at Old Hall, and Chris Skillicorn is really holding on. Cockrell gets out onto the curb, but does well not to lose the back end. It's very slippery on the painted curbs, and they head down the hill towards Cascades for the final time. That little dip under braking can almost unsettle the car, but thankfully they brake in a straight line, head through with left-hander, and now Tom Cockrell senses that this is not quite done just yet. We know he's very strong through this part of the course, heading up towards Island Bend in Shell Oils. Is there going to be a chance to retaliate? The answer is yes, he is. Up the inside of Island Bend. That's a brave move if he can put it off. And look at the speed he carried through the apex of the corner. Tom Cockrell much more confident than Chris Skillicorn on the outside line. And Cockrell gets through with just over half a lap to go in this first race of the Green Group of the Caterham Academy. You would never think, looking at this race, that this is their first ever circuit race, but they're driving like they've been doing it for years. Superb. Hopping over the curbs. Cockrell being chased down by Skillicorn. There's been a spin for somebody in the background, but they've managed to get going again at Old Hall Corner. Up towards Hislops. Skillicorn is still there. He's still not out of this fight just yet. Into Hislops for the final time, where we saw Tom Cockrell hit that fantastic pass down the outside. I can't ever think the back marker might have played a part there because he was trying to stay offline. And Skillicorn was possibly paying more attention to the back marker than he was an impending Tom Cockrell. And so the two front row men are going to continue scrapping for the lead here all the way to the checkered flag. There are only a few corners in it yet as they come up to put a lap on. I think that's possibly the number 6 of... looks to be, I think that's Marcus Eels. Oh, and off the road goes Chris Skillicorn, off the road in second place. Oh, and also Cockrell's gone off as well, I think. They've both gone off the road. So hitting strife at Druids with two corners to go. This is the last lap, this is the replay here. So they both turn into Druids, and they both go in way too hot. Skillicorn spins, almost holds it, but once you're on the wet grass, the car just speeds up and you're almost a passenger. But in the end, after that small scare at the end, Tom Cockrell wins a brilliant first race in his first outing to kick off the Green Group for the Caterham Academy. Second for Chris Skillicorn. He comes across the line 3.5 seconds back in an intense couple of laps at the end. And now we wait because there's a large gap back to third place where we should see, I believe, Denishan Erkan. Here come a couple of the back markers across the line. But Denishan Erkan, whilst we're watching that lead battle, has moved up to third place. There's been a bit of changing around in the rest of the top 5 and the top 10. So Denishan Erkan, the poor marshal waving the checkered flag, his arm must be getting tired because he's waiting for a third place car and it doesn't seem to be turning up. And actually, in fact, the last lap going through, Denishan Erkan did a 2 minutes 15, whilst the two cars that were battling there did 2 minute 18s and 2:22. So lots of high intensity stuff. This should be Denishan Erkan across the line now, hopefully. Cross the line, and it is Denishan Erkan. He was caught by the 31 of Gould at the end. Less than half a second between the pair for third place, but Erkan picks up the final podium spot. It is Gould in 4th position. 5th place should go to the 99 of Boys. Is there any change in the last lap? So Boys gets 5th, Hall is 6th, Duckworth is 8th behind Jones in 7th place. And they cross the line for 9th. almost a dead heat, but Hapgood ahead of Lazarus, 46 1,000ths of a second between the pair as they come through to complete the top 10. Wow, what a way to start the Caterham Academy season. A brilliant race earlier for the green group. The white group was a little bit more tentative because everyone was having to try and tiptoe around the tricky conditions, but in the green group on the drying track, a superb back and forth battle between Chris Skillicorn and eventual winner Tom Cockrell. And you just have the feeling that when we get a dry circuit, these two may well very much be the class of the field, and I would like to see how Denishan Erkan gets on a dry track too, because he certainly was the best of the rest from that top two in third place. But of course this is only their first race, so some drivers may still be finding their feet, some drivers may not find these changeable conditions to their liking. They might prefer a completely dry track. We will have to wait and see, but you can't deny we have two very competitive and very exciting groups in the Caterham Academy again this season, and we'll get the final result on the screen, I'm sure, in a second. So the Caterham Academy cars, as the last couple of cars come across the line to finish, they will be heading to Cadwell Park in a couple of weeks' time to join the rest of their Caterham Racing brethren, where we'll see the Road Sports and the 270Rs plus the 310Rs and the newly rebranded 7 UK Championship. It was formerly known as the 420R Championship, but they've gained national UK status, so congratulations to Caterham for obtaining that. They will all be out on the tight and twisty turns of Cadwell Park in Lincolnshire on August 1st and 2nd, so only a couple of weeks away for the second Caterham Academy race. But into the pit lane come our top two, and so we should be able to confirm the result hopefully very soon on screen. And so one also thing to note is that despite having some spins and some one or two light incidents, all 22 cars in the green group did manage to make it home, so a round of applause to them in their first race, and these drivers will always find themselves learning with every session they complete. Here's some highlights. It was a close start between the front two, Chris Skillicorn and Andy Lund, but things were going to change pretty quickly at the end as we see the cars heading through. This was the incident at Cascades, so a spin for Denishan Erkan, but he recovered well to pick up third place. Who would have thought that Denishan Erkan would have been in third? Certainly not him at that point when he had cars streaming past him in the wet. And then we had this very tight moment. This is further on in the race. This is, I think we saw Andy Lund have his first mistake here up at Druids. Just turned in with a little too much pace and round the car went. These Caterham Academy cars are incredibly lightweight, of course, and that they weigh only several hundred kilograms. There's more action further down, a couple more spins and incidents, but again, all these drivers finding their feet at their own pace. Here's a shot of Rob Oldland here trying to make a move up the inside of the 99. We had the spin here for Marcus Eels as he lost traction on the exit of Knickerbrook, but smart driving and quick thinking saw him back the car off the road. And then we see more battling here between some of the midfield scraps here. This is towards the bottom of the top 10. It was 10 and 26. The recovering Andy Lund, his antics weren't quite finished in this race, as he had a couple more spins and he eventually ended down the order.
Yeah, when it's finished.
And there was a spin also for the 29 as well, so he had to put himself back on the road. But again, all part of a learning process of these Caterham Academy drivers. And then we had another mishap here for car number 9. So car number 9, James Griffiths taking himself out of that fight for what was effectively becoming 5th position. And then we had this incredible lead battle between Chris Skillicorn and Tom Cockrell. They shared the front row together, and this was an intense part of the race. They saw them battling for the last lap here down into turn 1. Chris Skillicorn threw the block into Old Hall Corner. Cockrell thought he had to sit back and find another opportunity, and my goodness, he found it, because he was able to get himself in front with a great pass at Island Bend, and they nearly both threw it away from the lead, because incredibly on the last lap, both Skillicorn and then Tom Cockrell both lost the back end of their cars and went off the road. Thankfully both survived and avoided the barriers, and they both managed to recover despite this little tricky part, and Skillicorn managed to dig himself out of the gravel, whereas Cockrell slivered his way back onto the road from the grass. And here's another shot of Skillicorn in slow motion. A bit more graceful in slow motion, isn't it? But he managed to keep it going. but it was a victory for Tom Cockrell, and he wins the race. So, great stuff from the Caterham Academy. I'm going to hand back to Andy, as he will be clicking on in a second. So, as we say, Caterham Academy, of course, heading on to Cadwell Park next. If you want to find out more about possibly taking part in the 2021 Academy, you can do so by heading to cateringcars.com. But until then, we should be seeing them very, very soon. So moving swiftly on from Caterham Academy, we are going on to the Hyperdrive STXR Challenge. So it'll be remaining with myself, Scott Woodwiss, on commentary. And quite pleased for that, because this is a championship which has grown exponentially